at 4 o'clock, so let's stick to it. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm going to be your host today. Dennis has graciously stepped aside to allow me to practice my video presentation style. So let's rock through it here. As normal, the call will be fully recorded. It will be posted up on our YouTube channel as soon as we possibly can get it done. So if anyone happens to miss the call today for various reasons, don't worry, we will be recording it and it will be posted. I'm joined by Jesse and Sjoerd today. I don't think these two guys are a stranger to anyone here. Welcome, guys. Glad you could make time to join the call. We're also joined by Tony Drummond, who we've been working with for the past 5 months now, I think. Tony is the founder and CEO of tokenomics.net, and he's agreed to join us here today to try to answer some questions, talk a little bit about his knowledge base, which is tokenomics. So to set the stage a little bit here, we've got quite a big proposal out in front of our community at the moment, and it's our first network proposal of many more to come, which is dealing with our tokenomics. And it has already stirred up quite some discussion, emotions within our channel, and that's to be expected. This is not a small topic. And the changes that we're talking about here are potentially quite large and impact a wide swath of our community. So I thought it would be best to maybe back up a little bit at the beginning of this and open up the stage to Jesse and Sjoerd to talk a little bit about the genesis of all of this. Where did this come from? And that's been a big question out of community is, where did all of this come from? It was unexpected, and so maybe you guys can shed a little bit of light on that topic for us. Over to you guys.
Yes, I'm happy to take that one. Thanks everyone for joining this call, and I'm happy to explain everyone a bit more how we got here today and how this proposal came to be, really. But first, let me take you back to where this started and why we're think we need to evolve now. So we've been running this system, I think, for a little over 3 years at this point. And early on, we built staking, or the staking mechanism, to do something new on Solana. So it was an automatic and a proportional fee distribution system. So it was fully built by ourselves, and we've seen great adoption on the staking system that we have. So we're super happy to see that adoption, and we're also very, happy to see the adoption by other Solana projects, building on the foundation of our system and then building their own staking systems on top of that. So all in all, it is a great system, and it's, it hasn't been touched for 3 years. It has just been running as it is for all that time. So we're super proud of what the staking is in the Nosana ecosystem. But from day one, our North Star has been clear. We want to reward participation on the network. We want to reward throughput, and we want to reward adoption of the Nosana network. So we want an ecosystem where customers are incentivized to actually use the network. And we want an ecosystem where contributors are incentivized to keep it fast, to provide the GPU resources that they have. To create a reliable, fast, and abundant system. So at our Nosana offsite that we had earlier this year in June, we took a hard look at our token economics. And the conclusion was unavoidable. Like, it was time to revise how rewards are distributed on the network. So we needed proper incentives for hosts and for clients. And this is hard to do when a lot of the project's treasury is, gets siphoned to yield farmers or people that are not actively participating on the network. So I think that's about June this year. That's when we started working with Tony and the team at tokenomics.net. And we've been iterating with them ever since. So I think we're all excited to clarify how these changes that we're proposing align rewards with real contribution, and how we'll keep the value flowing to the people who power the network. So yeah, this is about building an ecosystem that lasts.
Okay, nice. So the big problem, or one of the problems, obviously, was how to properly incentivize the network when an awful lot of your emissions are being pushed out to passive staking. Would you say you were effectively, is that a blocker? So does that prevent you from doing these other things that you want to do?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So like a big portion of the project's treasury is going to people that are participating on the network, but they're not really contributing to what the utility of the network really is. And this is like, we're a compute marketplace. We're connecting GPUs with AI startups. So yeah, like in order to to help bring this value to the actual users, the current staking system is blocking it to some extent. So this is actually what led, what initiated our discussions with Tony and in the team, and that's what made us, design actually the current proposal.
Okay. Maybe I can turn this over to Tony a little bit. Tony, you founded tokenomics.net, and you've been involved with a lot of different companies. Maybe you'd like to give the audience a little bit of background on yourself and tokenomics.net to start with. What do you do?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here, everyone. And the precursor to starting tokenomics.net was actually building my own project, Last Bull Run. We grew that to a community of over 75,000 people. Our market cap was over $200 million. And then the bear market started about 3 months after I launched. So I had to ride all those challenges and issues. And what I told Jesse, Sean, Short, and the rest of the team, as I said, congratulations, guys. You're still building after weathering a lot of these storms that were actually pretty tough. And then they explained to me how they had built the product in these kind of things, how they have refined things in the community. And I got very excited about that. So our company really is meant to help founders across every area of their tokenomics journey. So sometimes we'll go in, do some root cause analysis. Sometimes we'll help prepare from scratch these new models. That's essentially what we do every single day. We've worked with over 80 different projects in the state. I also do a lot of content on LinkedIn. If you're there, you can check me out and you'll see my content there. And I'm very passionate about this, and that's what we do each and every day. A big focus of me is liquidity, which I'm sure we'll dive into a little bit into today's call. But I just want to say that throughout the whole process, Jesse, Short, Sean, the rest of the team was very dedicated to this, and everyone's voice was heard and mentioned, whether you were someone staking or using Nosana to do the GPU or a host. Everyone's voice was heard throughout all this work and fully taken into account. But at the end of the day, you can't make everyone happy all of the time. I mean, some changes have to occur to be able to move something forward in a sustainable way, and that's what we're all about here at tokenomics.net.
Yeah, nice. You mentioned liquidity, which is, I've even got a sticky up on my screen that says liquidity. And maybe this is a good place to go here. Now, putting Nosana aside for a little while here, and maybe you can, or we can discuss this holistically. How does a staking program such as the one that Nosana uses impact things like and the emissions and the level of the emissions that are associated with it, impact liquidity, impact token, and impact the sustainability of such a program?
Mm-hmm. Well, really good question and point. So let's start off with, when people see the token value, they see the fully diluted valuation, they see all that value there. When we're staking, we're emitting more value over time at whatever the price is, right? So if those users are receiving those tokens and selling, what are they selling into? Well, they're selling into the centralized exchange, which is going to be buying volume that absorbs that, or they're selling into the decentralized exchange, which is going to be the liquidity pool that absorbs that. And what ends up happening over time is, if people are selling, which a lot tend to do with staking in other systems and everything, into that pool, they're going to start to erode the pool. right? And that pool, then if it's so thick that it can handle a lot of selling pressure, it's not going to be able to go up either in price, right? Because the pool is so thick. And so what we are really trying to establish with this is how do we get like an equilibrium where we're giving out staking tokens that are actually enabling people to hold and to get value, but we also are incentivizing growth. And that's what I see most projects are missing. They're incentivizing the very people who sell in them, which happens over the long term. People get the rewards, they sell off. That erodes the market cap valuation, and everyone is losing as a result, especially if you're holding it to use the token in that cases, right? And that's what ends up happening is you're rewarding the yielders because you expect them to lock. Well, you're not actually enabling the customer themselves, which in this context is someone who wants to use tokenized GPU power. That's what Nosana represents, is tokenized GPU power. That's what I own, right? And if I'm selling that, that's going against those who are holding that to use it. It's rooting their buying power. That's what I see across a lot of projects in this space. None of these things are isolated. That's the problem with staking systems. They work well when they're not predatory in these kind of things. And also, this one is not what I want to call predatory. It's just a matter of thinking about the overall sustainability and that liquidity. That's where people miss, because it doesn't take much selling pressure to kill off a lot of market cap into the pool. It really doesn't, right? It really doesn't. And it's actually death by 1,000 cuts is a term I came up with. I explained as well when I think about this, right? All these little tiny rewards that are being sold, it might not look at much, but when you extend that out across a long time frame, it ends up being a lot. And if that's removed from the liquidity pool, that's what's backing your price on the decentralized exchange. That starts to erode that value, and that's everyone is losing as a result of that, right? So a lot of people will think, hey, what's the big deal? We have this market cap and only a little bit's released, but where does that value actually get released into, and how does that get extracted, and how does that affect the overall token? That's what we're talking about here, and that's the system that a lot of people don't get. They tend to look at their part and their rewards. They don't actually understand what's going on throughout the whole system. Uh, and what if they're actually getting value after the staking actually occurs as well, right? So that's what I would say
I
about
gotcha.
staking systems.
Yeah. And from a sustainability perspective, and there's been a lot of discussion on this one of and there are those that believe that, well, of course the system is sustainable. Just reduce the APY a little bit. But according to the numbers I've seen, the project, when Nosana specifically, emitted 2.7 million tokens in the last year as staking rewards. And so doing some basic math, there's 100 million maximum tokens. So that's 2.7% of supply that was issued in 1 year for staking. In projects in general, is this high, low, in the middle, from your professional
Well,
experience?
yeah, well, the challenge is always being 4 years old as well, right? So you're 4 years old, so you don't have as much attention in volume usually as well, right? So that's one of the things. But yeah, I would say anytime the staking rewards are outpacing the actual revenues, the usage utility, then you're going to be at a negative deficit, right? And so that's what you need to do is you
Right.
need to stop the bleeding and drive massive amounts of incentivization to grow. That's what you need to do.
Yep. Okay. Which I think is exactly what the gentlemen here have proposed. So on that note, so that's how it affects liquidity. Emissions coming from company-held tokens with a maximum supply. And I was asked this question this morning about, well, Solana pays, 7% or 8%. But as far as I'm aware, Solana does not have a maximum supply. They mint tokens daily, as far as I'm concerned, and they will
Yep.
continue to mint and emit for their entire lifespan. So inflation
And real quick,
constant.
and it's locked inside of the decentralized exchange, all these tokens. So it has a lot of utility. So even though it's being minted, it still has a lot of utility that it's locked in these pools and used and everything else, right? So it shows
Yeah,
you why it's still the same thing. There's a lot more people using Solana than just getting it emitted to them. 100% guaranteed.
right. Gotcha. Okay, so there was the concept of the Nosana ecosystem. There were problems and challenges that were identified with the existing system, and the obvious one being, okay, we want to do X, Y, and Z, but we're kind of blocked from doing X, Y, and Z because of the passive staking. Now maybe back over to Jesse and Sjoerd, and I'll pick on Jesse here in specific. Maybe you can spend just a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes, going through the process here. So how did you get from that brainstorm or offsite to this proposal?
Yeah, of course. So the process obviously is very, very important. Like it was just mentioned, but we're not a new project. It's not like we're engineering tokenomics from scratch and doing something new. We started 4 years ago making this blueprint of how this works, and to make adjustments has an impact across a lot of different factors, right? It's a very broad thing. It's like at the center of the whole project. And obviously in Nosana, we want to become the most popular, most used GPU grid in the world. That's where we want to grow to. That's how we all win, right? That's our final station. And we need to make sure that the tokenomics are in the right place. I think it's unrealistic to think that you can set them once and they will be there forever, statically doing their thing. So like that, there needed to be changes was quite clear for a while, and the urgency of it, I think, was already just discussed. But obviously, like the emissions are incredibly important as well, right? We just saw the symptoms, like what goes wrong when the emissions are in the wrong point, when they don't contribute to the goal of the project. But I just wanted to highlight that they are incredibly important for projects like Nosana, as we need to use them in order to get where we want to go, which is we need to use them to attract clients to buy GPUs on our network. And we need to use these incentives to get really high quality and large amounts of compute readily available on the platform. Like this is the superpower that we have and that we need to use in the right way to achieve it. Anyway, so we have these goals, right? We know where we want to go. We know what we want the tokenomics to do. And that's kind of our starting position when we went into this process. We also realized that we have a bunch of people that are currently staked, that are using the network. We have clients and nodes. So to make any changes, we wanted to be very throughout. We wanted to make sure we consider all the details, all the angles that are at play here. Tokenomics are funny because in essence, they're quite simple. Like solutions are quite simple. It's not like higher mathematics or like it's all quite easy to understand, but to engineer them, it's so sophisticated and like there's so many nuances and details there that it's really a craft that requires a lot of time and love and expertise to make that work and happen. So it's something we took very seriously. Also, why we're working with Tony Drummond is because he has a lot of experience and insights, and he came with a very fresh perspective to our project. Obviously, the core team at Nosana, we have experience with tokenomics and we've engineered all of this. We've also been in this system for a long time. So to get external people in that have a fresh perspective, that have worked on different projects from different sectors and can highlight what works and what doesn't, is very important. So all that knowledge we took to the table while we were engineering this solution that we've made. And yeah, I think that's kind of the approach we took. So taking those goals, taking also the developments that have occurred in the space in the last few years. A lot of projects have entered the space with different types of tokenomics, and obviously there's no way to just copy tokenomics from other projects, as it's so nuanced and every project is unique. So we need something that works for us. But we can definitely learn from things that didn't work for others and certain elements that worked well to make sure that we can get like this optimal system that will last us for a very long time, which is what we want to achieve. Another important part is that whatever we come up with, like all these ingredients that we're putting in place to make this tokenomics work, that they kind of add up and that they last long, like at least for a reasonable long duration. Like in the end, you need to end up in a state where it's sort of like self-sustainable, where this, tokens coming in, tokens being like created in emissions and like all of that needs to come together. There needs to be like a really nice level where it just works and where it contributes to the project. So we've done a lot of simulations as well. I really like this approach in also the advice of Tony, but to make really detailed simulations of various configurations of parameters and see how it plays out. What does it mean for the treasury? What does it mean for liquidity? What does that mean for the different pools of tokens that we have for emissions, right? And node inflow, node outflow. Like, what does it mean for prices? Like, there's all these things that trickle down into the product and into the market that we already have. So we can simulate this and get a pretty good idea of what kind of numbers work and what don't. So you maybe don't see that in the proposal, but there is a lot of like study going into coming up with a solution and to make sure that there is not like some crucial mistake or something that won't scale as time progresses. So all of these things have been taken into account. So I think the process has been very thorough. We also want to make sure that the current stakeholders in the network gets to share their opinions. So that's also why we've taken the time here to discuss this. Actually, creating the process for making network proposals was something new at Nosana. Like before this, we did not have like a way to publicly, together with the community, come to these sort of larger fundamental changes to the network. So setting up this voting process with the proposals and the Nosana network proposal system is also something that we put in place to make that work.
Cool. So, yeah, this is where we stand today, and we're still learning. I mean, like you said, this is the first time we do an NNP. This is the first time we do voting. Is it going to work perfectly? Probably not. Will it work good enough? We hope so. And you know, I think the community has been relatively interested in contributing their ideas and their thoughts, but I hope they also, you know, move the proposal outside of the view, and also think about, you know, the NNP process, and, you know, are there ways that we could do this better, and look at that. There was a question, and I'm just trying to dig it up here, which directly relates to this. Yeah, here it is. It was raised in community, and it was more along the lines of, you know, why this change now? It feels like it's being rushed and hurried along, but from what you just described, this hasn't been a quick process.
No, I think, yeah, it's been quite extensive. Like I just tried to explain, there's a lot of work that went into this, just coming to these ingredients, to all the values for parameters, and like the process has been, we've been working on this for at least 4 months intensively to come up with this proposal. And then, yeah, we're still like now going through the stage where we can discuss this and see input from stakeholders, right? So I think that yeah, not being too fast. I think like a more spot on critique, in my opinion, would be that this has been going like pretty in depth and slow for crypto pace. But I think that that's the way to do it when it comes to tokenomics and the likes.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Jesse,
Yeah.
very much. I think that.
I just want to add there real quick also that, you know, next to the work that we've put into the proposal, which is indeed, and yeah, it doesn't feel like really rushed, but also the proposal itself, the change that is about to happen once, you know, the proposal goes through, is also not rushed. If you look closely and into the proposal, which we're probably going to talk about, it's a change that's going to last, you know, for a while, so that all the people that are, you know, involved in some form or another have enough time to see what they want to do and how they want to react to the changes. So yeah, that's also something I like about this proposal.
Cool. Okay, thanks, guys. Yeah, go on, Tony.
Yeah, so what I like to add is, of course, when we do this process, it's very in-depth, and the community only sees kind of the outsider's view, right? But inside the building is a lot of people working very hard. We did a lot of analysis. We ran through a lot of scenarios. We even went into looking at the liquidity pool, selling pressure, rewards. We went through all of this stuff in detail. So we're not just making like surface level decisions, but the other thing is we want to think about, what does Nosana really represent? How is it going to grow? And what are its competitive advantages? When you look at centralized versus decentralized compute, I've given Jesse this visual before, but let's think about this. Centralized, you're paying for everything, all the overhead. You're paying for the executive bathroom. You're paying for the toilet paper that even hangs in their stall, right? When you look at decentralized, you're paying for an independent party to use their GPU. And this is maximum efficiency. When we compared this to other companies that were out here, it's actually about a 60 to 70% discount if you're able to use the centralized compute, which is pretty powerful. Now, if you pair that and we look at, well, now we have these emissions that are going out. It's primarily going to people who just want to get yield. But I think we all collectively agree we want the project to succeed. And for the project to succeed, it needs to hit its KPIs, its metrics, and work on its strengths. And so what we thought a lot about is how do we create incentives to enable even more companies, especially we see X402 right now. We see all these payment systems coming online that will enable payments to come through even more efficiently for brands that previously could not use Web3 to be integrated with this. And that's the thought process. So if you're integrating with them, now you're redirecting emissions towards growth and incentives and not in a predatory way. And I'll give an example. Look at all these farming DeFi protocols. People go in, they mine all the rewards, they dump it, they go on to the next thing. That's what they do. And really, those rewards, once they're gone, that's not helping anybody. So here we set it up so there's no way to farm the rewards. In fact, anyone who gets the Nosana through the treasury to use it, it's not actually Nosana yet. They have to use it. And once it gets used, then it pulls from treasury, right? So we're still not enabling anybody to mine the rewards. And so in our opinion, this is probably the most sustainable approach you can take, is to look at the yield and say, hey, over the course of 4 years, it worked great in the beginning. It was an innovation, but it's not working as well now. We could tell that by actually looking into the details and seeing what's happening. And if we were to instead not cut back entirely, but instead to stop some bleeding here and to redirect towards growth, that can mean an incredible reverse of what we might need to have happen, because the technology is here. From what Jesse and Short have told me, they've worked on the network, getting it very robust, right? So you're at a point where you can scale, and that's what you have to focus on, is how do you scale? Well, you need incentives, you need growth, you need revenues. And this is one way for Nosana to position itself, in my opinion, in a great way. Even if you have two decentralized computes going against each other, you have one that is offering a little stipend bonus and one that is not. It's going to be a better advantage. And that was our thought process behind this. We were putting it together. It's really to emphasize growth. A lot of people are worried about staying where you're at and staking and all this. How about growth? Why you want to be part of something that's growing very fast? That's what you want to be part of. And we're at a point right now where we agree that compute and AI compute is not going down. It's going up in demand. And so that's our opinion, is why we want to be positioned the right way. And the tokenomics is a big piece of that, because everyone kind of wraps around that in their own unique way. Some people want to use it to get their GPU. Some people as a host want to use that to lock in, basically to get more incentives and better protect the network. And other people want to hold it because they believe in Nosana, and that's why they're holding that. And all these people need to be respected throughout all the work. And that's a big piece of what we did here.
Cool, guys. Thanks. This is it's also very informative for me. So I'm enjoying this discussion as well. But okay, so let's take all of that. So we went through the beginnings. We've looked at the where you want to go and some of the challenges that you face. But now we've got the proposal out there, and we're running pretty much on time. So maybe I can just hand over to you guys, the three of you, as a panel, maybe to discuss I think the three major areas of the proposal, which is the passive staking and the rundown or the decay of the APY and the sunset, which has been proposed. Introducing the host staking and the host reward system, and the client rebates, and how that ties into improving the level of emissions, improving the growth, which is what we're all looking for here, of how does this incentivize growth. So maybe if I can just hand this over to you, Jesse, maybe you can kick it off, and you guys just have a discussion about these three topics. Is that cool?
Definitely, yeah. Let's do it. I can start. I think you just pictured a nice bird eye view of the three major components. There's actually a few more. Maybe I'll touch on this like at the end. But I think these are indeed the three major, like the most important ones, right? And the first one you mentioned has a clear goal. We want to attract really high quality compute. When you look at marketplaces like Nosana, one of the major things is we need to attract high quality GPUs when we need them, and we need to make sure that they are up to the standards that clients expect. This has been a recurring topic. A lot of community calls and stuff we've talked about this. A lot of features in our product are focused around this. But when you look at the tokenomics, this is not properly covered. Like this is not like, I think this is the most important part that we should pay attention to make sure those nodes get rewarded and incentivized to behave correctly. So the system put in place now is this is all like technicalities are in the proposal, so I won't speak mathematics here, but the purpose of it is that you get rewarded as a node for being available running jobs, having enough tokens staked once staking is there, like to tick all the checkboxes of being a good proper node and being online and doing jobs gets you rewarded. Like that's the goal here. So this is the first part that we have emissions going towards to, which is I think a really important one. Second one there is the I'll just go for them all three like quickly, and then I guess I'll hand it to Tony or Sjoerd because there's a lot more to say about these that's interesting to highlight. But when it comes to rebates, we want to make sure that clients that spend money on the network that they get incentivized to do that more. We want to provide them sort of discounts for purchasing larger amounts of compute in a sustainable way. And this is a big goal of what we wanted to achieve as a network to basically incentivize and increase client usage, as this will obviously, explode in growth if that's done properly. As clients that use the network start using more and more and more, you get a nice growth curve and both sides of the platform will grow. So this goal is achieved here with the rebates mechanics, also in the proposal, but basically meaning that once you spend Nosana tokens on the network, you get like a small rebate in DNOS that you can later use to basically have a discount on compute. So you can use the DNOS to pull some tokens from treasury and use that for discounted compute. Very, very cool system. It's a bit more nuanced. It also ties in slightly to like stablecoin mechanics that are like later on the agenda, but I think it's a very nice core component. It's very important there to have. So maybe I'll hand it over to one of you guys if you want to highlight what I just mentioned there.
Well, I think that the big question, the number one question we're getting in community is, why are you changing the passive staking and why are you sunsetting it? So maybe that's a good place to start.
Want me to cover
why?
that?
Sure.
I can cover that. So when we first started this project, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the chart. I'm going to start seeing what's happening, right? What I ended up seeing was a lot of tiny cells. That would either be from a staker, that would either be from a host doing a job. I saw a lot of tiny cells. When you extrapolate that out across weeks, it ended up being not a whole, it doesn't take much selling pressure, but you can literally watch the market cap erode from the liquidity pools. So when you start, that's the core problem is what we're trying is if you keep it the way it is, you're going to have the same results, right? So it's classic Einstein doing something different, expecting the same, different results. Essentially the definition of insanity, right? So from our point, that's why you need to make the change is because the rewards are not incentivizing the right thing. And how do I know that? Well, I know that because if you're holding Nosana as a token to use it, and the people who are getting the staking are selling on you, it's not, it's the, you guys that are holding, that are doing whatever you want to do, it's your money, right? Those are the people that should be incentivized, not the ones that are selling, right? And so basically it ends up being that selling each other into the ground. And that's what I see with a lot of these staking systems. You can look at a lot of them. Look at Uniswap's token as a great example. That's only purpose of that is to mine it and to dump it. You see it just keeps going down and down and down, right? And that's the problem with staking. So instead, I think people have gotten into a frame where how do we keep people holding? The way I'm looking at it and the way I look at a lot of these things is how do you get people excited and use tokens for growth? Because that's really what drives all the value in this space, right? Is growth in revenues. And that's the difference. So if you're keeping your tokens here and you're giving all those out to people that have historically just sold everyone else down in that value and taking that yield out, while also taking all the Nosana emissions, how is that beneficial if we continue that? Instead, we still need to respect that there are people that are locking their tokens and need benefits. And that's why it needs to have some level of sustainability as it's worked back, right? But the tokens that we make up now, how do we use those for growth? That's the difference between it, I would say. Most systems are trying to get people just to stay on the boat while it's going down. That's not the right approach. It's like, that's not what you want. Not that this is the case with Nosana, but I'm saying that's the normal approach. And that's why these staking systems, in my opinion, need to be revised because they're not working. And you can see that happening across the board in many respects.
Okay, cool. There was and I know the proposal contains the full detail on the how the API will run down and the linear reduction in the pool sizes month by month, and also part of that equation is obviously there are going to be people that unstake at the same time, and because of the dynamic system, it's going to find its level, its equilibrium at some point in time. I sneakily suspect that it's actually going to be higher than a lot of people expect, because if there's a rush to the exits for stakers, well, that staking APY is going to jump. So there may be some magic left in this system yet, but we'll wait and see. But there was a question regarding, why not just adjust the APY of the passive staking down instead of eliminating it completely?
Sure.
Well,
Yeah. Let's say you're a business and you want to grow, and you have some. Let's say you have some cuts, flaws, you got some leakages, right? Do you just put on a bunch of band-aids and say, well, now I'm good?
Right.
Or do you say, well, how do I grow? That's the question to solve. It's not how do we stay where we're at, right? It's how do we grow? That's the right question to have. And you guys are positioned in the best time. Think about 3.5 to 4 years ago. How was AI deep in compute? Now you're in the cusp of what would arguably be the best position to be at, with the strong network, with the team that's stuck around, that has proven they're not looking to just dump and run like so many others have done. I think these are massive strategic advantages, right? And so that's why I personally believe it is worthwhile pursuing taking this that is not helping any growth at all, which some people think it might, but it's not, right? And taking that and redirecting that towards specific growth. That's what I think, pairing that with your company and the team and what you guys have from a foundation level to build out the network in the right way. That's what you have to look at all the pieces. I think so many people just look at what affects them, but they don't look at the whole piece together. And that's what we look at throughout all this work. The people, the technology, the market positioning, right? We have the incentives to get people to use this, thinking about, if a traditional business is going to use decentralized compute, then they need a reason to change. That's going to be change management. You need that needs incentives to occur. Otherwise, people will not change. All this stuff is really important, and it all connects to a whole system. So when I see people question one part, they have to understand the whole system before they can question just one piece, because they don't have the context and how it all works together to drive the success of the project and network.
Yep, agreed 100%. It was I mean, I'm not, I got hit in the head last year with the reductions in APY, over and over and over and over again. So, I'm not complaining. Now, turning the attention maybe a little bit to the client rebates, which I find particularly interesting, and not to go into the implementation of it, but the reasoning being with the DNOS. Give us some info on this. How
Sure.
Not how's it going to work, but why use? Is this another token?
Yeah. Here's the problem that I saw Sean, too, and we talked about as a team, is a lot of people are predatorily farming network activity. You see it all happening, these test nets. Then as soon as the test net's over, mainnet comes on, the network activity drops to the floor. Right? That's what happens, right? They go on to the next thing. So the whole thought process was, well, if you're going to reward for use, which I believe to be a positive thing, how do you make sure that reward isn't predatory and sold down, right? Because the whole reason why we're doing this is to help reduce selling pressure. So in this case, if we think about DNOS, it'll move from that treasury into that host. They're getting the actual Nosana token. But if that's not used, well, then what happens is it's not actually Nosana selling pressure. They can't take that and just sell it. That was one piece. The other thought process was, some of these incentive campaigns, you might want to put limits on them. And that's why it has its own token. So you can even say, only during this time window, this DNOS that you've earned can be used, right? So you can use that to your advantage without having to hold essentially all these random tokens on your balance sheet, or having to give out a lot of excessive rewards, which generally leads to selling pressure. In this case, there is none, because it only goes to the hosts, and now we have reasons for the host to lock, whereas before you didn't, right? And so now that's the magic behind it. Anyone who gets a token through the system should have reasons to lock up, and that's the or use it. That's the purpose behind it, right?
Okay, cool. And with so the DNOS is fictitious. It's not an actual token. It's not tradable. You can't sell it. You can't create a liquidity pool with it. It is fictitious behind the scenes. So there is actually no NOS emitted in this circle.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So there's
just your treasury.
Yeah.
You could use your treasury tokens. And that's how it works, right?
Nice.
Exactly.
Nice. Over to the host staking and the incentives, and again, without going into detail, Jesse, maybe you can answer a couple of questions that have been raised. From my understanding, the host staking in its primitive form has no relation to the existing staking program and the staking and unstaking periods and 365-day lockups. My understanding is there will be a new staking program put in place for this with simpler guidelines. Is that the case?
Yeah, that is the case. So we're actually not even touching the current staking system. It's been there. It's solid. Like that system will be there. What's going to change mainly on this part is that the passive rewards that are currently emitted, the APY, is going to be tapered down. Maybe just to jump back a little bit on that question before. So it's actually going to go down slowly, right? So it's a period of 12 years where it's of 12 months, 1 year, where the system goes, it's being phased out. And anyone can still unstake their tokens at any time. So that part is like everyone has the opportunity now to unstake, and like that's just stays there. But for when it comes to the host staking, this is a new system. It has a few unique characteristics. There's a few things that it achieves. It is really focused on hosts. So it's mainly for like only if you have a GPU that you want to contribute to the network, that system is relevant for you. And it has some kind, there's a lot of like, I think for hosts, it's a very interesting topic to learn more about the exact details. And we will engineer a lot of these parts as we go, but like the basic, most fundamental properties are that you can, for example, increase and decrease your stake more easily. That's something that we want to make to make sure. So instead of having to unstake all your tokens, you can unstake a little bit, and that allows people to basically counter the volatility of the token. So if it one day your stake was worth 500 euros, but the next day it's worth 5,000 euros, you're way over collateralized on your stake. So that's not fair and not really sustainable for larger node operators. So there's a lot of characteristics to that staking system that we want to use to ensure that larger operators and also individuals that they that it works for them and it's like convenient to use, but also secures the network, which of course is one of the more important elements on the client side. It also ties into a little bit further, I would say, like when you look at the quality of compute that people deliver. Clients often think of the term SLA, but like we're looking at these types of qualities from nodes. That also ties into the staking system. So it's really a system engineered for the GPU marketplace that we're offering and to make sure that it fits and has those properties that we're looking for.
Right. So obviously this is at proposal stage, and you're not expected to, have exactly, how this is going to be implemented. But assuming I'm a host staker or I'm a host, and I want to or I have to provide my stake. Can you give me an example of, for example, how long would my staking period be?
Staking periods is like one of the knobs that we're like having to tune. Like the duration of your stake also has to do with security and all that. So we don't have like real numbers there. It's not going to be 365 days. Like that wouldn't make sense. It's also not going to be 5 minutes because that also wouldn't make sense. We need to have some number expressed in days that will be set.
Yep.
That people need to lock their tokens in a stake, else it wouldn't make sense. And then there is also the amount of tokens, which will be largely related to basically how good your GPU is. So the purchase price of your GPU, like roughly, is going to indicate somehow like the number of tokens you need to stake. These two parameters are the most crucial ones, I think, for host operators to be aware of. But I think the exact values of these will be later on shared and decided on. And for this proposal, the mechanics are like the most important part. So when you look into the proposal and explanations, it will really explain these two mechanics and what they mean for the hosts.
Okay, cool. Maybe we could also, I mean, you did touch on at the beginning that there were some other pieces to this and not the just big three. Maybe the fourth piece, and maybe not to discuss it at length, but maybe give some reasoning behind it, is the discussion over the stablecoin payments. And I know in the proposal that is stripped out to become its own proposal because of the nature of that beast. But maybe you can give some reasoning, the group of you, behind why. Well, why is this important?
Yeah, I'll kick it off maybe, and then we can do a little round. I think this is a interesting one to talk about. There's a reason why it's not perfectly defined in the proposal. It's because we're discussing it still to some degree, how this is going to function and how it's going to work. But the importance of stablecoin payments, I think, is very clear, because in the Web3 space, we're all used to the volatility and nature of cryptographic tokens. But when you come to like the regular compute market, if you talk to AI clients that are not in the Web3 space, they're obviously not interested in how crypto markets work. They just want to buy compute, and they're used to having stable rates expressed in US dollars or euros for the compute they need to buy. Like the first question is, okay, how much does a GPU cost in euros per hour, right? That's something that you need to answer as a network. And there is a one way to solve this is that you basically swap tokens somewhere in your UI and or have clients swap themselves and off ramp and on ramp. But it's just not like it's not working. Like clients are not going to take care of that themselves. So one thing that we want to express in the proposal, and that is an essential part that the tokenomics should account for, is the option for clients to use stable coins or even fiat on purchasing compute, which is one of the goals as well that we set out like to account for, to make possible. But yeah, how this exactly functions is a bit more complicated, I would say, especially when you look at how do you ensure that the NOS utility remains intact and remains powerful as you introduce other currencies to pay for compute. So there's a lot of networks that have different systems how this works. We believe we have a very, very good idea on how to solve this in a sustainable way, but it's going to be put forth in a further proposal. But like, I don't know if you guys have some inputs here, Tony or Shirt, that you want to share.
Yeah, what I thought a lot about is, where a lot of volume and everything come in is through like a B2B for people for organizations that run a lot of compute, right? Because if you can cut their costs down 60, 70%, and they're running that, and most of their costs are, aside from overhead with people, is actually paying for the compute, you can actually probably pique someone's interest if you go to them and say, hey, we can save you a lot of money on your compute if you use decentralized. Now, for them to do that, if you look at a company, well, then they have to have a balance sheet. They have books, they have accounting procedures. And then when it gets into holding tokens and how do you do this, it gets way more complicated, right? So the whole thought process is really saying that customer base, how can they still get into Nosana and power the Nosana network and the Nosana token using stablecoins? I'm not sure how much more we can go into in depth in that. We have ideas that are not like, oh, we're replacing all the payment then for Nosana, so there's no utility if you use stables. That's not the point at all. In fact, it's the inverse of that, is what we're thinking about. But that being said, it's all about the friction and looking at, hey, again, if we want to grow, how can we grow? Well, we need larger brains. We need larger businesses, companies that are spending a lot of money. And if you have that, you have consistent compute to come in. And if you have that at a better price and you're still delivering the same value, because what do I care about when I pay for compute? I care about the model being trained correctly or whatever the case might be. I can get that done whether I'm paying a centralized party or a decentralized party. No matter what, I still care about the same outcome as a consumer. That's the value I get. Anything else outside of that is waste in the process, right? It's something the customer would not be willing to pay for. And that's what we're trying to do, is trying to say, how do we link the maximum amount of efficiency to that ideal price point right there to have the value and go upstream more to those larger organizations, which will drive all the revenues back towards the downstream if you understand how that works, right? And now, again, if you can't pay with a stable payment process, that's going to become a lot more challenging. And that's the reason behind it as well, is it lets you go after a much bigger market than just people looking for tokens, right? Or gambling on tokens.
Yeah, I'm very keen on this. I also, that raised some questions in my mind as well, and I did note the disclaimer in that section that the team needs to go careful with NOS utility and to ensure that remains intact. So I'm very curious to see what the proposal is early next year on this entering our system. Okay. So that kind of wraps up where we're at the moment. We've put out the proposal, and it's in the hands of the general public. It's in the hands of community. What's next? obviously the big question on the community's mind is, when vote, and when vote details, and anything else that's happening between now and that date. So again, maybe you guys can give some more insights into that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we've proposal has been out there. We want to leave a little bit of time for people to discuss and give feedback and properly digest what's in there. So when the time comes to vote, there is people will have a really good idea and have enough knowledge on exactly what it entails. I think that's kind of the period that we're in now, right? With this AMA and explaining and having discussions in Discord. So please, everyone, do engage and ask questions, and we'll be in Discord as well after the call, so you can always post your questions there. But then, obviously, the moment to vote is a very important one, which will happen somewhere, the exact date will be announced, but somewhere from between the 17th and 21st of November, later in the month, there will be the voting period. But before that, somewhere next week, we will release all the details of how the voting will occur. So the exact procedure there will be discussed. I'm not going to highlight any details now, as we want to make sure it's a clear package that's very easy to understand for people. It won't be a complicated process. Some of the major things to keep in mind is that this is stated in the proposal, but the people that are eligible to vote is anyone holding NOS. So any NOS holder will get votes proportional to the number of tokens they have. Same goes for stakers. So if your tokens are staked, you still get votes proportional to your stake NOS. So yeah, if you have tokens, then you will be eligible. But the details and exactly what to do and some caveats will be shared next week. We'll make sure that the process is quite simple and very transparent, as is our nature. We want to make sure that it's a transparent, decentralized process on how the voting will occur. But I think that's the most important, actually the most important detail is to keep an eye out for next week's announcement on the details of the voting process. I think that's the key getaway here.
There was another question from community, and you kind of touched on it there, but maybe it's good to reinforce it. The question was, will stakers have a higher weight associated to their vote? And from your description there, I believe the answer is no, that there's equal representation across token holders and token stakers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a clear no. So the stake NOS is accounts for basically one vote weight, similarly
Right, token for
one
token.
NOS. Token for token.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we'll have that information next week, and the voting around the 17th to 21st of November, you said? Somewhere in that range. Okay.
Yeah, that's roughly
Excellent.
the range. Pretty sure that's going to be it, but next week's announcement will actually stipulate the date and the exact details of that. So yeah.
Okay, now we had a lot of questions in community. A lot of those were answered on the fly in the Discord channel. We pulled a few of them, some of the broader questions into this call, and we've also gone through all of those now except for one. And it's probably the biggest one on the list. So I'll turn it over to you guys. Is if the proposal does not pass this vote, does the current model just continue?
Yeah,
that's a very good question. Fair question. Shall I take it? Yeah, well, so like we said, so the current model is not sustainable. It has a finite lifespan. So the tokens that are emitted into the staking program are 2.7 million a year. So the pool is running dry, basically. So if this proposal doesn't pass, the current model stays in place until a new replacement has been found and voted for. So we just keep on looking for alternative ways. But the current model is not sustainable. But if obviously, if the vote is no, this proposal is not going to go through. That's how it works.
If the vote is no, then it's back to the drawing board,
Drawing board.
and
Yes.
issue a new proposal. to perhaps answer some concerns or adjust things. But I think that the message is clear that that the program is not sustainable, that this isn't going to go on for the next years, and this change, the team believes that this change needs to happen. Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else that you guys would like to offer up in terms of discussion? We're at 52 minutes, so there's a few minutes left. If there's anything that I've missed out or glossed over, the floor is yours, guys. So
I'll add one thing real quick, if you guys don't mind, is it was a pleasure working with Jesse, Short, Sean, and the whole Nosana team. Everyone in Lawrence, I see David on, met him in Dubai in April. There's a lot of great people on the team that have great intentions. And I think that's the one thing to pay the most attention to. When you're voting, you're really thinking about the people behind this. They've proven across all the years they've been working here for the foundation and moving the project forward, their integrity, their work efforts. That's the one thing I would just say is, everyone throughout my experience was positively trying to affect the project and all the stakeholders. And yes, there's some ways you have to give and take a little bit, but that's what I would say is that's the intentions behind this work, and that was what I experienced that I want the community to know as well, is the efforts, the intention that they put in, ensuring everyone's voice is heard, and none of the concerns and questions were things we didn't discuss, right, throughout a lot of this work.
excellent. Thanks for that, Tony. Yeah, well, I think that then that brings us to the end of our call. We have the question and answer channel in Discord. That channel will remain open. Any questions that are relevant that are posted in there will be answered by a team member. I can't stress that more. So if you have a question, if something is unclear, please raise it in there. It is also an opportunity in that channel, for the community to discuss this. Of course, there needs to be discussion, both amongst community and also involving the team. So, and I think I speak for the team here. As long as it's kept constructive, use the platform and use it to discuss these things and to form a common view. We're not going to sit in there and police it and yell at you and say, you bad people, you can only say good things. These are major changes, and emotions do run high with major changes, and we get that. So but anyway, gentlemen, thank you. Tony, thank you for taking the time to join us today. It's greatly appreciated. Short and Jesse, I know you guys are busy as hell, so thank you also for spending some time to walk through some of the stuff with community. And let's see how this moves forward. And for the audience, we'll see you in Discord.
A great chat. Thanks, guys. See you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.